You are listening to the Hammersley Brothers e-commerce podcast. Like what you hear and want to take the shortcut on your e-commerce growth? Join hundreds of brands that work with us and head over to joinhb.com. That's joinhb.com and see how we can help you further. Join our members and smash your targets and unlock the profits within your e-commerce site. Good morning, Ian. How are you?
Hey, Mark. I'm well.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, just
right.
getting through the week as normal. And just
It's
to tell you about the
Monday.
weather, first of all, it is very foggy here, like completely foggy. So I couldn't even see because I actually work from an office at the end of the garden. I couldn't even see it.
Wow. That's shocking. How does the fog affect e-commerce in New Zealand?
I don't know, because it tends to go very quickly. But you do. What's weird today is that normally you hear the ships on the horns, because we're right by the sea coming into Auckland Harbour, and you usually hear the horns of the ships when it's foggy because they have to use the horns, and I quite like that. They don't seem to wake me up, but I haven't heard any. So either there's no ships or it's not that foggy down there. Yeah. So I don't know how fog affects e-commerce. I guess it's the same as anything. I guess it would make you feel like you want to stay inside a little bit more, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it would. Normally, it's normally quite short, isn't it?
With the business we used to do a lot of emails for, and they would always have an email for extreme weather events, like it's super rainy or it's super snowy. But we didn't have one for super fog, did we?
No.
We're like, it's super foggy out there, guys. Like, here's a treat. Yeah.
It tends to be quite localized as well, doesn't it?
So obviously it doesn't make that much difference. Otherwise, we'd have had a specific email for it.
I tell you what, in England, when I live in the middle of the countryside, and in the Cheshire countryside, and then in the morning, when it's early, like sort of 6:30, and there's that little bit of fog just hovering over the fields, and the sun is just coming through. It's incredible. It's just it's breathtaking. It's absolutely, almost, heavenly.
I also remember it in England, how when it snowed, it can make the most awful looking areas look beautiful. Like we're from Stoke-on-Trent. Some of the areas in Stoke-on-Trent aren't that picturesque, but when it snowed, everything looked really pretty, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, even Stoke-on-Trent.
So anyway, we will talk about e-commerce and what we're going to talk about today. So this is going to be the third in the series of answering some questions, and those people listening to the podcast, probably not on the YouTube, but on the audio one, I always go through what the questions at the beginning, so you probably know what the questions are, but I'm going to repeat them anyway. So the first question is, should you start an e-commerce brand that you are passionate about or where you see a market gap? Second question is, what should you do if you're just bleeding money every day? Like you're basically losing money every day and you need to kind of stop the gap quickly, or if you're in that situation. And the third question is, what are the biggest mistakes people make during the founder start period of the e-commerce business when they're actually trying to get to a position where they can scale? Okay, so taking the first question, should you start an e-commerce brand you're passionate about or where you see a market gap? Do you want to take that?
Yes, I should, yeah. So should you start an e-commerce business that you're passionate about or where you see a market gap? I mean, the ultimate answer is, if I had to choose, it's got to be where you see a market gap, ultimately. But if you can combine that with something you're passionate about, it makes it a lot easier. And the reason is in order to be successful in e-commerce today, in 2025, you have to understand the emotional needs of the customer. If you don't understand what the customer needs and whether or not it's a heaven or it's a hell, it's very difficult for you to communicate effectively with that customer. Because if you don't know who your customer is, if you don't know who your customer is, but you don't know what makes them tick, it's very, very difficult. So, but to look at some of the biggest e-commerce businesses that we've scaled over the last 20 years, sometimes they're the most boring things, like car batteries, like brake pads for for your car, spare parts for your fridge, like
Yeah.
water filters, like basic. You can't you don't have to be that passionate, about certain things, but you do have to understand what the customer needs
Yeah.
emotionally. But then on the flip side, we've seen a couple of businesses be incredibly successful because they were very passionate about it. There was one business in Manchester that was, she was a solo female entrepreneur, and she didn't know much. She knew what the customers wanted. She was very passionate about the industry. She absolutely knew inside out emotionally where the customers were. And she was selling like hair extensions, and she did incredibly well. And she saw the gap, the market gap, but she also was passionate about the business. And
Ultimately,
that's why she was successful.
like you say, there's got to be a market gap. Well, there's got to be a position. There's got to be a space for you in the market. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a business that is a hobby project for you that you're just going to pour money into, and that's not what you're doing it for. You're doing it for you're doing it for an income. You're doing it for to replace your job. You're doing it for something that could be a lifestyle business, or you're doing it for something to build to sell. So you do need that gap to kind of run along. But like if you look at all the founders we work with, they kind of fit the business they run. You know what I mean? Like if you took some of the business owners and put them in charge of the other business owners, it wouldn't make sense. They all kind of seem to fit. Like, there's a guy that sells dust spares. He fits that kind of business. There's someone that sells goat milk soap. She fits that kind of business. They all fit the business. It's not very unlikely you have like a founder of a business that doesn't almost look like.
Well,
they don't necessarily look like the customers, but they would get on with the customer if they were friends with them.
You know what? And over we've been in e-commerce now for 25 years. I mean, it's all we've ever known, and there's much more e-commerce businesses now that have scaled, that the owners are passionate about the product than there was. And the reason for that is because the technological barrier has gone away. 20 years ago, just because you felt passionate about it didn't mean you could just go and start an e-commerce business, because you'd need lots of money to build the website in the first place. And it would, the technology wasn't there. There was no Shopify. It was, you had to go and do it from scratch. So there's a lot more people who have come into e-commerce who are, I've had an idea, I'm really passionate about it, and they could do it, and therefore they've been able to scale. However, you can't, it kind of interestingly, the first question is quite linked to the third question, which is about, what are the biggest mistakes people make when they're starting in e-commerce? And it is linked to this, because you can't just be passionate about something and think through sheer determination and hard work it's going to be successful. There are intrinsic fundamentals that you have to get right first, in order to give you a much greater chance to scale it. And that's understanding the math. So just because you're passionate about it, I think what's happened is the businesses that are passionate about it, that happen to have the right maths, and by maths we mean margin, lifetime customer value, being able to be disruptive, basically to be able to have great profit. I think would you say it tends to be a fluke? I mean, I don't know if that's right. Sometimes we talk to businesses that we're really passionate about, and we'd say, "What's your margin?" And they go, "Oh, 90%." And we would what? Like, are you serious?
I think everybody, like, people are passionate about many things. Like, a lot of the time, I think one of the worst advice in business is follow your passion. Like, just follow your passion. Like, because ultimately, like, was I passionate about e-commerce before I started? I didn't even know what it was. It didn't exist. You know what I mean? So you couldn't say follow your passion, because e-commerce was not a thing when I started. So I followed my interest around things that I was good at and things that I was capable of, where there was also an opening gap. And then I became interested in it as it grew. And I think that that's the best way to do, is to find a gap and become and follow the ones you're interested in.
I also think, sorry to go, just before you go off a tangent, I think just on that conversation about being passionate, I think you have to be passionate about starting a business. Actually, I think if you have a passion for something, let's say you're interested in horses, and we work with quite a few people who have been selling horse related products, and you could have a great job, and then you could go and ride horses at the weekend, and you could be very happy doing that. But there's something about this, you have to be interested in the mechanics of what a business is and scaling a business, and want to see it grow. You've got to have that passion too. And I think probably when we were younger, that's really what we had. When I was like, my early 20s, that's what I was interested in. That's what I wanted to do. And I was passionate about that. And that's where I was.
I think the other mistake people make is they identify with their business too much. Like it becomes an extension of themselves. They have a bad sales day, they take it personally. It's not going well, they take it personally. It's like you see these people doing up these houses on these TV shows, and they're supposed to be doing a house to rent, and they end up putting like a certain shower system in there because that's what they want, even though they're not living in the house. They build the business for themselves, not for the customer. And if you can identify too much, surely you can be passionate about the subject, but at the end of the day, you're providing a service to the customer, and that's what you should be focusing on. And it isn't you. It's very difficult to do. Like, like myself with our business, if we do have a good year, then I feel like I'm amazing, and if we have a bad year, I feel like I'm rubbish. It's silly. It's nothing to do with me at this size. Well, it is to some extent, but
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we absolutely. I think we're all emotionally linked to our first businesses, ridiculously. But I think it's probably also because we started our own first business when we were in our 20s, and that's really you're very young, that age. So it's very difficult to decouple the emotions.
And I was rubbish, absolutely rubbish. Like I made all the mistakes. Like it's almost as if I was like stupid, but you're looking back, you don't know. You don't realize what you don't know.
What I'm going to say is that we're coming across quite a few people that we've been working with who have bought e-commerce businesses from the founder, and it is not their passion. So they've essentially, this will be their second, third, fourth, time around buying a business, and we will come across them because say, hey, I've just bought this e-commerce business. And I've bought it because the maths were right, and I think I could scale it, and blah, blah. But it's not, I'm not in this industry, so I don't really know as much about the emotional needs of the customer. And I think there are certain businesses that lend themselves better to others for that. So if you're in an industry, if you're buying an e-commerce brand that is, let's say you're selling, a cosmetics brand to making it up. It's a health and wellness brand. You're selling it to like menopausal women. I mean, like that's literally the typical scenario. You have to really understand the emotions of that customer. And if you're a business person coming in and you're just going, oh, it's great margin, great lasting customer value, but you have no understanding or experience of that market before, that's harder than somebody coming in who's selling, a very problem-solving business.
Yeah, but I would say that when you buy it...
Wait a second, I'm finished.
Yeah, okay.
But I appreciate you skipping in. But I was saying, let's say there's a business and they're selling replacement fridge spare parts, and the current business is they're buying it from a UK wholesaler they're operating at a 32% margin, and exactly where they're getting it from. You can come in, you can put that business at a 7% margin overnight without any changes, because you understand exactly what the problem is. That's what I was just going to say. So it's easier for somebody to come and to buy those businesses. They don't need as much emotional understanding. It's purely a mathematical business. Whereas the menopausal business is got a great margin. You can't get a higher margin. It's all about getting the marketing right. Sorry, you can.
Yeah,
you can
I was just going to say that when you're buying that business at that scale, that will have been figured out for you a lot more. So that you'll be able to see the ads that have worked, you'll be able to see the copy that's worked. You'll probably be able to afford someone who to do those ads. It's much more harder when you're the founder at the beginning if you don't know. Like you and I created a menopausal supplement like from scratch, and we got no money, and we were having to do the ads ourselves. It'd be very difficult because we don't know the market. We're not of the market, and that's the other thing I was going to say was like. If you are passionate about it and there's a market gap, you do have that, and you are one of the target customers-ish, you can appear in your ads, which is really helpful at the beginning because you go, well, you need to do some video ads. And it's like, well, if I'm selling, I don't know, like a supplement, a menopausal supplement for women, I'm like, well, I can't be in an ad. It's like, what's this old white guy talking to me about menopausal supplements? It doesn't work. But if I'm a founder who's had that story, it does help. So there are things, but like, I wouldn't let that hold you back. If you look at the founders that we've got, there's lots of people who aren't necessarily the customer. So like there's some older women selling to a younger demographic. There are men selling to women's industries and women selling to men's industries and stuff like that. It just makes it harder right at the beginning when you've not got that much startup capital, doesn't it? Yeah.
No, I was thinking. I mean, just coming back, just working out if we've actually answered the question properly. Do you need? I think the reason, basically the original question was, would you pick an e-commerce business you were just passionate about, or one where you clearly see a market gap, and I think the thing that the question doesn't actually talk about, which it should do, is what kind of maths you want in the business. And you can be passionate. You can be passionate about a business, and you can also see a market gap, but that does not mean it will be successful. I've seen businesses who've got both, because we're saying it's like an either or, like as if you got it. You'll be successful if it's Well, also, how big the gap is, how big the gap is based on your profit velocity. Your profit velocity is basically how quick you can scale it, and that's based on really margin and lifetime customer value. Really, so we want a decent margin of 65%. We want an average order value of really over £100. I mean, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? And we want them to buy like 4 times a year. And we want that. We want to be able that's like a lovely business to have. So, you've got to add that third element into it. And I think it's connected to the third question, which is the biggest mistake people. Should we wait? Let's wait, shall we? Let's wait till we get to that.
Yeah, because I think that what you're alluding to is the fact that you can start something, you can be getting sales, you can be passionate about it, there can be a slight gap, but you're not making any money. And that's the issue. Because then you get yourself into a position where you've sunk all this cost into stuff and all this effort into stuff. Whereas if you'd actually sat down at the beginning, like, if you'd gone on to the level 1 program and actually gone through your numbers, you'd have gone, this isn't ever going to give me what I need.
And sometimes you can become so connected to it emotionally that you blink.
Well, you've told all your friends this is what you're doing. Oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. This is my business and this stuff. And then you go,
and also to yourself, and sometimes you've gone beyond the point of no return, and you can't back out. You're committed. And you've just, whereas if you could just turn back the clock a bit and go, actually, if I just tweaked the model slightly at the start, I could have gone for a slightly, a better lifetime customer value, a better margin, a better average order value, and therefore, but ultimately, what are you doing businesses for? You're doing it to either bring a meaningful profit into your business to change your and your family's life, or to scale it to sell it. That's what you're doing it for, so you can get a big chunk, right? They're the two reasons ultimately, whereas it's easy to forget that, particularly if you're young. I mean, like we were in our early 20s, we had no concept of really any of that. We were just doing it for the sake of doing it, I think. And lots of people in e-commerce were doing it for the sake of
we were doing it to get an income. We wanted an income as fast as possible. And so that's part of the thing is that you might not necessarily, it's okay getting an income, but like you want to do really well, don't you, ultimately?
I didn't do it. I didn't do it for an income. I did it because of the creative joy I got out of seeing something that I'd made working and growing. And that was why I did it. Personally.
Yeah, but at the same time, you did want to not starve to death.
At the start, it wasn't. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I did it, but it was different. I mean, now I'm 44.
You were living with your parents at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Does help.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I had no responsibilities, and I was living it with mum and dad, and so
yeah.
Well, you have really no risk. I think it was the happiest time of my life.
Should we move on to the second question?
Move on.
Second question is, what do you do if you're just bleeding money every day?
So it's fairly simple. It's a fairly simple answer. Cut your costs. So if you're bleeding money every day, you quite simply have to cut costs, cut fixed costs, and well, I mean, look, there's two ways to make a profit. Ultimately, it's either reducing your costs or increasing your sales. And the reason why we want profit is because we can take that profit and we can reinvest it into the business and we can grow quicker. I mean, that's fundamentally what we're doing. There's been quite a few businesses that we've come across in the last probably 18 months that have come to us in distress. And I think, go back prior to COVID and at the start of COVID, we didn't really find that was happening. Nearly every business was coming to us saying we want to aggressively scale as fast as we can, and that's what they did. Whereas in the last 18 months, we've both been involved with a lot of cost cutting. Coming in and going, we've got to trim that, cut that.
Yeah.
And you're left with a much leaner business that you can you've got breathing room. What would you say to that point?
Yeah, one of the things that we show people straight away is like, for this level of fixed cost, this is the minimum amount of sales you need to do a month. So we always want to know what that point is. So given your margins, given your variable costs, for these fixed costs, you need to do this level of sales a month. And there have been people that come to us, and when we showed them that, we said they just can't do it. They'll have like £500,000 worth of fixed costs to cover every month. And they go, well, we need to do at least 1.5 million. We only do that during our busiest month. And it's like, well, that's the situation you're in. Like, it's literally fundamental physics of a business. Like you have to cover those fixed costs because that's where it is. And the trouble with like the ones that came through COVID, they were very difficult for them because they thought that they were geniuses and that the growth was going to continue. I mean, looking back in hindsight, it's crazy, but they went and took on big leases. They took on big leases.
Lots of people did
so they couldn't get out of those fixed costs. And that is really difficult because you can't just turn around to Google or Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, I know we're spending a lot of money with you, but really we need to get a ROAS of 10 because it's just not working like this. Like nobody else cares about your fixed costs.
I'm going to give you three stories that came to mind during, in this, regarding this question. If you're bleeding cash, there was 3 businesses that were bleeding cash, right? And these are real people that came through the level 2, recently. The first one was an American business who had a $120,000 fixed costs a month, right? Losing money, but they had a profit of 85, a margin of 85%, and they had a lifetime customer value of 2. So, and they weren't spending any money on ads. They were spending like $4,000 on ads, right? So that was quite simple. So we cannot cut the fixed costs because it was a family business, and they were all living in the area. They couldn't cut the fixed costs. It's like, so we only had one decision, and that was to increase spend on Google Ads and Meta. Now we could do that because the margin was 85%, and that was what we needed to do. In order to be profitable for that business, we had to spend our way out of it. There was no other way. And luckily, they had a great margin and a great lifetime customer value. So that's tick, right? That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 was a business that had a UK business that expanded rapidly during COVID, loss-making, losing a lot. I think probably losing about £1 million a year, had fixed costs of £220,000, had a margin of 35%, and a lifetime customer value of about 1.52 times a year if you were lucky. They were already at a return on ROAS lower and more aggressive than they should be. We couldn't cut the fixed costs. They were stuck with a lease. There's only one way that business is going, and that's bankrupt. Right? There's nothing we could do. Cannot increase ad spend because their margin was 34%. The lifetime customer value was bleeding as dry as we're pushing that as hard as we possibly could be. Then they're stuck with a lease because they signed up for 10 years. That's really, really challenging. That's really challenging, that one. The third one was...
Just before you said the second one, is if you see it like that, you can go and talk to the lease and see what the break clause is and whether that is less money than, like actually paying for it every month. Because you can see the writings on the wall. If you keep like this, you're going to lose this amount of money. So you've got to get those fixed costs down. And usually in a downturn, like which it was, who else is going to rent that place? So it's very difficult. But like our advice is talk to us before you get in that situation as much as you can. Don't get in that situation so you're absolutely smashed.
I think that's
and then
that
say
second scenario was that they, because I always think you should go and talk to your suppliers. You should talk to your suppliers. You should negotiate a better trading terms. Better. And if you are set to make, because this particular business also they were very seasonal, and so that it was going to come, but we're talking now. It was like June, and this busy season was like November. And they were, basically they were going to lose money.
There was actually an interesting story about, there was a business, not in the UK. I won't say which country it is because it'd be pretty obvious, but it was, they were selling stuff to kind of homeware for your outdoors areas. And they had very high fixed costs. They were in a very similar situation. And they tried to spend their way out of it, but they were only getting like a 2 ROAS, and it was very difficult. So I saw last month that they'd actually, because they needed sales, but they needed sales without the ad cost. And so they were a family business, and they actually recorded a video with a really open and honest video saying to their customer list, saying that we need you to buy something from us, otherwise we're going to go bankrupt. And we need you to see if you need anything for your garden and try and keep us alive. And actually they had quite a good response to it, because they needed a couple of months where they got sales without having to pay for the ads. So it was kind of interesting, because if you've built up that goodwill, which they had, and they were one of these businesses that like really didn't do anything like unless they really believed in it and all that kind of stuff, and they built it up for lots of time, that I think they had quite a nice resonance with that message, and people actually wanted to support them. So Like there are certain things you can do if you're a family-based business. You can actually go to your customers and say, look, this is the situation. This is what happens. If you do need something, now is the time to do it, because over the next couple of months, we really need to, turn things around. So, it's not a proud moment, but
no, but I mean, but there are many, many, many things that you can do before you, like you say, like Mark says, you need to call us, because there's lots of things to do before you need to email your customer and say we're about to go bankrupt. That is not our advice. Don't email your customer and say we're about to go bankrupt.
No, I mean that's your absolute last.
Yeah,
that's the last
that's right.
stand.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a business that I know. You're talking about a business that also was capturing no email lists at all. That had probably one of the worst websites I've seen. It was Shopify. It was awful. Couldn't navigate it around. Had no homepage. There was all sorts of fundamental things wrong with that business. But
but it was too late. It was too late. Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was too late. Yeah, it was too late. The third one was possible, and this was a business that had fixed costs that were too high. They were losing about $100,000 a year, and they had lots of contracts in place with third-party suppliers. They had a £3,500 a month SEO contract. So this is a business that was losing They were an American business. They were losing $100,000 a year, yet they still had a £3,500. Let's call it $4,000 SEO contract, monthly. Right, so they're like, we've got to keep it because if we don't have our SEO contract, we're not going to get our traffic. I was like, hang on a minute, whoa, you're not going to have a business. You're not going to have a business if you keep the SEO contract, and also the SEO contract, is driving 99% of people to the blog, and the bounce rate is like 99%. There's been zero add to carts from anybody in the last 30 days. From your blog traffic, cut it now. You're not gonna have it's not like the SEO is gonna drop off a cliff like the moment you cut it, straight away.
And if you've had an SEO agency for long, for someone I used to actually work at an SEO agency a long, long time ago. It was my own SEO agency. I don't know why.
I was going to say, who was that? Was it mine? Were you doing something on the side?
I used to run SEO for other people. Like that's one of the first things I did when I was really young. Actually, the story about it was I was working for Siemens, and you rang up a guy who wanted some SEO, and I was about 28, and he said he wants some SEO. So I walked down to Borders and bought a book on SEO, and went, yep, I could do SEO, and that was my first SEO client. Literally, I just read a book.
Sounds like the Hammersley brothers. Yeah.
Anyway, but what I was going to say is that it's not like if you've been running an SEO and you've been running a client for a long time, you probably, if you are behind the scenes, you realize they will have run out of stuff to do. If you have an SEO contract for the first 3 months, you have loads of stuff you're doing, other stuff. Like by the fourth month, you're going, how the hell can I write another article about casters that go on supermarket trolleys? I'm like, I am out of ideas. That's what I was. One of the last customers I did was casters, and I had to try and find interesting blog articles to write about casters. And I was like, the only thing I could think about was like go-karts that had casters on the bottom of them and things like that. And it was painful. So, but SEO, for an SEO company, it's big money for them. So there's lots of SEO companies about, because compared to Google, if you're spending $10,000 a month on Google, the agency only gets 10%. Whereas if you're spending $3,000 on SEO, they get it all most of the time. They might have to buy some link building and all that kind of stuff, but the margin on it is massive. And so therefore, even though a lot of the time, many of them are dreadful, the margin and the incentive for them to pretend it's good is huge. Because if you think about an SEO agency, they only have to get like 4 clients, and they're turning over like it's 20 grand a month in an individual.
All traffic,
it's huge money for old rope.
Yes. All traffic is not equal. That's the other stupid fallacy about SEO. It's like considering somebody who clicks on a blog article is going to convert at the same rate as somebody who clicks on a Google Shopping ad. It's completely different traffic. It's like trying to, it's like the equivalent between somebody, wandering past your store if you had a physical shop on the high street, like somebody just passing your store to go and get a bus, and you're just like trying to shove them in the store, versus someone who's actually in store looking at a product, picking it up, and about to walk to the till. It's completely different traffic. So a lot of it is nonsense. Anyway, coming back to the reason I mentioned that story is that this particular business held that SEO contract great value. They really and I think they did have some decent SEO links, but rankings, it wouldn't have dropped off a cliff. But also they were this business wouldn't have existed. What are you trying to protect? Your relationship with your SEO agency or your business? I mean, it's ridiculous. It was an absolute no brainer, instant decision.
That business was like a death by 1,000 cuts, wasn't it? It was like a little bit of a subscription here, and another little bit of a subscription here, and another one here, and it's like add those up. Like I think if I did the same with my bank account, I'd be horrified.
Well, there was
all of those.
Like we said, there was a chiseled, athletic body hiding underneath, this wallowing, inefficient blob of an e-commerce business, because it was just, but inside it was this lean, fast, agile, profitable business.
Is that how you see yourself in the morning in front of the mirror?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's $100,000 business in there, and we're just exposing it, really, and that's really all that business needed to do. We needed to cut this monthly fee, that monthly fee, this monthly fee, and there was the profit starting to emerge. And and it's knowing what you can cut and what you can't cut.
Yeah. I think that is, in the essence, the main skill of e-commerce is actually starting to trade in your business as you're trading the profit width of the profit. So you are, there's once you start to realize what you're actually trying to do, you can optimize it so much better. The trouble is most people can't see it. So because you can't see it very clearly, you don't know what is having a big effect on it. And it's one of the biggest things over the past 3 years that I've realized is fundamental to, and I don't want to say this in kind of like a flashy way, but to get rich from e-commerce, it is the fundamental skill that you need. And you see there's probably like the top 5% of e-commerce owners that really get it. And those are the ones that they're trading the profit. They are really trading the profit, and they understand it. And they would never get themselves into a position where you have those little costs, because they can see the impact it makes. It really hits their ability to spend money on the thing that actually grows the business, whatever that might be. And so every little subscription you take on, like $500 a month or something like that, it's taking away from somewhere else, unless it's actually providing. So it's like, what are you carrying, and who is providing?
Also bringing in expensive agencies at the wrong time, and they're charging a $2,000 a month fixed fee for running your Google ads, and you're only spending $2,000 on Google ads, and you've got excessive management fees. It's just it's absolutely the wrong thing. I mean, it leads on to probably the final third question, which actually we've alluded to a couple of times, which was what are the biggest mistakes we see people making when they're starting out in an e-commerce business, and it's not necessarily when they're starting out, but we do see more fundamental errors, because by virtue of being in an e-commerce business that's bigger, hopefully you have scaled it beyond a certain point that you figured out a lot of the fundamental ones. But what would you...
So the final question is, what are the biggest mistakes people make during the founder start period of an e-commerce business?
Yeah,
we have talked a few of those in the podcast today.
Yeah, but we have. Yeah, I mean the fundamental one. Now I would just kick it off, and you can tell me what you think about this. And we made this mistake early on, and then we look back and go, what the hell did we not like see that at the time where we'd not, going back to what we said, we'd found we were working with e-commerce businesses where we'd seen the market gap. We'd been passionate about the product or the industry, clearly understood the emotions of the customer. What we hadn't considered was the fact that the maths, the fundamental business mechanic maths, were really bad. Where we had a margin that was too low.
I think that's our biggest mistake was product margin.
Yeah,
we didn't understand, like, take 10 years ago, the impact that had in not only did we not know the impact of product margin, but we didn't know the product margin of the business we were going into. And so we could go into a business with a 35% product margin, and then everybody else would have like a 55% product margin, and we'd be like, why is this not working? Why are we finding this so hard?
I think the key is here. The key, what you've just said, is it's relative to your industry. So you were competing with people who were selling the same types of products to the same types of customer, who had a 50% margin, and we had a 25% margin. That was really tricky, and it's become much more important now, because the thing you've got to navigate is Google and Meta. It's paid ads. Whereas at the time, back in the day, you did have SEO and you did have organic.
Also, paid traffic at the beginning was dirt cheap. No one was doing it.
Well, it was, yeah. Well, I mean, through the Google shopping was free.
It's free.
And you get organic reach on the platforms. Everybody was trying to get. You could get organic. Social content. It was a lot of it was free. Whereas now it isn't. So if you're sitting there with a low margin, you're trying to go into the market, unless you are we do see founders who have got an organic following, can go do that. But I think that was the fundamental mistake we made, was that we didn't understand the maths. And then the other one, which we talked about the other week, was that we see people trying to do everything, a bit of everything. Trying to do Meta, trying to do Google, trying to do TikTok, trying to do Pinterest, trying to do Instagram, trying to do Snapchat, trying to do LinkedIn, and basically they're just trying to bloody everything. They're all over the place. They're not doing anything particularly well, and they're massively overcomplicating it. And we said the other week that until you're doing 1 million, you really should be focusing on one channel, the dominant channel.
And also the mistake we made when we were younger is we started too many businesses. We kept starting every time we were like, oh, that's a good idea. We go and do that. Like, we just completely distracted ourselves. And so that we had this kleptomaniac kind of group of things we were working on, none of them that actually, it was like, it took a long time for me to realize that the main thing I was working on, the thing that was sitting on my desk, was actually the thing that was actually the most profitable. And I just needed to stop doing everything else and just focus on that. And it's like, I think that's, both of our minds are like that. We'll talk and we'll go, oh, you've seen this guy? He's making so much money from
really bad at
tomato timers. And like, whoa, like, we could do that. We could start that. That'd be easy. And like, we fall in love with the idea of something. But you've got to realize that whatever business you do, whatever things you do, it is going to be all encompassing, particularly over that hump. And there's a hump in every business where at the beginning, it's you doing everything, which is fine. And then you get to a point where you kind of need staff, but you can't afford them, because if you employ staff, that's your salary gone. And then after that point, you're big enough to employ people. But there's that no man's land in the beginning that you have to go through with every business, where it's like, oh God, if I could just have some help with this, it'd be great. But I can't afford them because I've got to pay myself. And so you can't, if you're having 10 businesses running, which I'm not saying we have 10 businesses. How many businesses have we got now? I think we've got three or four big ones, which is too many, but we do have quite a lot of staff, to be honest, now, so it's okay.
Well, it's more efficient for us because we've got a big team, so that's
Yeah, it's different. Now people just have to deal with our whims just go onto Discord and go, hey, this is what we're going to do. And they go, oh, God, not another idea. And then they just wait for me to get bored with it and then continue doing what we're doing. Anyway, so yeah, you just got to avoid, you've got to be mindful of your own bandwidth, your ability to deal with crap, to get that the business over the no man's land.
Do you mind if I just go back to quickly just touch on the margin point? And I think because we've talked about margin loads, yeah, we go, of course, who wouldn't want a bloody 65% margin and a lifetime customer value of 3 times a year and an average order value of £100? Who the hell wouldn't want? Of course, we'd all want that. It's very easy to say that. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful, but the tricky part is how do you get a high margin product? And I think your son, Ben, who is my nephew, is that right?
Yeah, I never know what they're called either.
Ben,
your Uncle Ian.
Yeah, I'm Uncle Ian. He's Matt. He's making something. He's doing hand drawn maps. In the style of Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you'd like to say that word. Is that plagiarism? How you're going to get to
Tolkien inspired.
Tolkien inspired. And he's doing that, and he's making it himself. So he's got a fantastic margin. He has very low lifetime customer value, but it doesn't matter because he's got massive margin, and he has no fixed costs at all. So he's been able to make something
in the house.
It's like I was when I was 21, just living at my parents. What you need to do
17.
is move back in with your parents. And that's how you start an e-commerce business.
Yeah, should we do that, Ian? Successful. Just turn up at mum and dad's house. Hey, we're moving back in.
Yeah,
we have a little bit more of an entourage behind us now. You'd have,
but it is becoming harder because the whole middleman, middlewoman, wholesaler, distributors, a lot of them have been cut out, and there used to be quite a clear. Anymore. Yeah, there used to be quite a segregated, separate, and everybody was dealing with the similar margins. And whereas now you get a lot of people going direct, you get manufacturers who are going direct, and you get brands that that were buying through resellers are going and sourcing direct. So you're finding that margin is a tricky one.
But wouldn't you say that now is compared to any time in our lifetime, now is the easiest time to start a business?
Yeah, I would. And the reason I'd say that is because of the technology. Things like Shopify.
Technology's
and
done.
Klaviyo.
It's become commoditized. Everything's
like
there.
PMax and Advantage Plus for Meta, for Facebook. It's so much easier.
And there's still competition in the social media space. There's always a new channel that's giving organic traffic to get the users to move over. Now it's TikTok. After TikTok, there'll be something else. There's always something that has free organic that can actually launch something. And you just got to get that Venn diagram of something that works on TikTok, something that you can talk about, something that has high margin, and you can start. I mean, to be honest, we wouldn't do TikTok. We'd pay to play. But if you've got no money,
it's taken us a long time to actually figure out, what to do with meta ads. Understanding what type of ads work for what type of business, and that's so now if we were launching a new e-commerce brand, we would know straight away what type of ads would work. Whereas 5 years ago, we'd have been fluffing around trying to understand what type of ads would work for this type of business, and it would take us years.
Well, it is helpful that we get to see thousands of e-commerce businesses every day with all their fundamentals and all their numbers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just a unique position, isn't it, to see stuff and the level is
unreal. The speed of a business that didn't exist a year ago that could work, that come onto the program, work with us, and then doing 10 million, and you're like,
well, look at that chap in Canada. He's gone from doing 10 grand a month to doing 100 grand a month in 3 months.
Yeah, many businesses didn't exist. They don't exist, a couple of years ago. So that didn't happen. It's gone. It's been quite phenomenal. So you're absolutely right. To go back to the question, it's difficult to get margin because you've got to go bigger. You got to go, but actually, it's so much easier and so much more opportunity.
This mistake is taking your talent, taking all your raw talent and your energy, and putting it into something crap. That's the biggest mistake you've got to do. Like you've got this passion, you've got this move forward element. You're going to do something. The biggest mistake you can do is by just taking yourself into something that is too hard. Like we've done that with businesses. We've gone like, if I just work really hard at this business, we just give really good customer service and we just be really great, we'll just make it. And it's like, that is not the case. You've got to push that energy into something that you can win at. You are got to make sure that you're playing the right game, the right board game. You choose the board game. And that is the biggest mistake people make, is that they choose the board game that is fixed and flawed, and it isn't going to give you what you want. And so like you're living in an era where starting an e-commerce site has never been easier. It's your route to market is there. There's no gatekeepers. You can do everything you want. You've got access to customers. Everything is there. The only mistake you make is by picking a business where your fundamentals are just going to work against you.
Yeah, you're picking the wrong horse. I mean, you know, in some respects, you can actually, you know, when you're picking a horse at the horse race, you can see who's going to win. Like it's so obvious with just a little bit of foresight. It's really obvious before you get really passionate and hung up and in love with the idea of something. You know, I actually, a friend of mine, he does whitewater rafting, and he came up with an idea of this really novel paddle, you know, like for kayaks. And I was like, and he's telling me about this, you know, this unique design of the blade, and I was like, right, there's no lifetime customer value in this product whatsoever. The size of the market in the UK is tiny. Globally, it's really, really, really small. The margin is only 40%. Nobody even understands what the product is. You're gonna have to have massive acquisition costs. There's no lifetime customer value. This is dead.
Yeah.
You know,
and you know
it's
what?
Not going to work.
All his other friends would have gone, that's a great idea. You've got to bring this to market. It's amazing. You've got to do it. And that's what you hear from anybody around you when you're saying going to start a business, because they feel like that's what you want to hear. But if you say,
you
do
need
you
to
want
come
to buy
and speak
one?
to
Give
Mark
me a
Hammersley.
wallet.
He's the most negative. You know, you
I'll
literally
kill
got
you
to. Yeah, you got to get a briefcase of $1 million and put it in front of Mark. He says, no, that's not. It's not. Yeah, it's not enough. It's not going to work. It's a combination.
I don't think I'm a pessimist. I get excited by ideas.
You are. When I have a great idea that I'm excited about, your job in your head is to know this is a load of reasons why it's going to work.
To be honest, a lot of your ideas are crap. They are. Oh, I found this investment, and I'm like, oh God. Sometimes I've had to let you do them. Think
why
of one
do
of them.
secretly?
You put £100,000 into something. You know what I'm talking about. I let you do it because I couldn't stop you. How's that gone?
There's a meeting about that tomorrow.
Is there?
Yeah, careful, because the founders may well be listening to this podcast.
Yeah, well, I didn't say anything whether it was good or bad. I'm just saying.
It's still time.
Just highlighting.
There's still time. There's still time. You know what? I think there's two types of businesses, right? To keep it simple, there's the businesses that I think you got to pick either a high average order value, higher margin business, or a high repeat and a lower average order value, which typically goes hand in hand. You know, you tend to find but if you've got the opposite of those, so if you've got a low average order value, low margin, low repeat, that's pretty tricky. If you've got a high average order value, high margin, then you're better off. So it is. I didn't explain that very well, but it's I think it's one of those two. It's either high AOV, high margin, low repeat, or it's low AOV, slightly lower margin if you can, but high lifetime customer value. That's to include cosmetics and things like that.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right,
then. Much.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I will see you soon.
Cheerio, everybody. Bye.